Cirque du Soleil is a combination of circus arts and like a concert type of vibe. This is a live show, just like any other live show. However, our performers, they don't follow a click track. The music follows the action.
But nothing ever goes wrong.
Most of the time when things go wrong, the audience has no idea, and that's because I think everyone here does a really good job. We have a pretty unique perspective from this position. We're truly the only people who see it almost daily from the best seat in the house. The music is written for the show. It's written for the action that's happening on stage. This particular show was heavily influenced by Disney's Fantasia musically. So it's very classical. We have cellos and violins, and we have lots of woodwind instruments. It has a lot of Disney themes sort of woven into the music. So even though all of the music is original, a lot of it will feel very familiar to you. This is a live show, just like any other live show. However, our performers, they don't follow a click track. They don't follow, not like a Broadway performance where they say the same lines at the same time every single day. Our juggler may take a little longer to set up a trick, or our swing to swing act or teeter board guys, like they might take a little bit longer to set up a trick, and so the music follows the action. I like to say the show is about 60 to 70% live musicians, and it's augmented by another maybe 30 to 40% pre-recorded tracks. So the band is split. I've got little cameras right here that will actually show what the band towers look like. I can see the musicians. This particular band tower is located at the base of the Luxo lamp on the stage right tower there, so behind those sheets. Mm-hmm. And the other half of the band is located behind the pencil sharpener on the stage left shelf over there. You know, we've got channels for everything, but sometimes you don't necessarily want to reach, for example, for all of your drums if you're trying to push all of your drums at once, right? So we've got everything sort of grouped into our drum VCA right here, which gives me some control over the entire drum mix. Of course, I can still come over to this layer over here and access any of my mics, for example, my kick drum mics, my snare drum mics, hi-hats, toms. He plays some percussion instruments, some chimes, taikos, bongos. He's got a side snare. He's got a roll and a sampler that he plays. He also has an Ableton system over there that he plays some sound effects and stuff out of. So that allows me I can dig in and make any change that I want to any of those independent channels. But if I'm just trying to turn up the drums, I've got that VCA here. We've got all of our keyboard instruments over here. That's just our band leader who plays the piano. He plays a Roland RD2000. For the majority of the show, it's just set to a piano patch. And so that I have control over here. The reason we put him and any of our other musicians that may only play a single instrument on a VCA is because in the event where he is out, or if, for example, our guitar player breaks a string in the middle of the show, people have to run and use the restroom during the show, or any reason they may have to step away from their position, we can enable tracks, and all of a sudden that musician is on tracks. And so this would be our pianist here and all of his tracks. We have a reeds channel here, and this is for our woodwind player. This one here is just labeled Axe Effects. Neither of our guitar players use amps in the show. Everything is direct sound. Will, our sort of our lead guitarist, who also plays some mandolin in the show, plays through a guitar processor called an Axe Effects, and that's where he gets all of his tones. Then we have a VCA here labeled Guitar Cello. That's Michael. He's our cellist in the show, but he also plays some guitar in the show. Violin, we have Kat, our violinist, also incredibly talented musician, and she's on this VCA. And then this is just a VCA for all of our Ableton tracks, so we can turn them up or down as we see fit. Finally, we have our vocalist. Her name is Mary Joanna, and we have a VCA for her because she will sometimes sing on her wireless mic, and sometimes she'll sing on her wired mic, depending on where she is in the show. On this top layer here, we're running all of our Ableton channels. So we're getting 16 stereo channels of Ableton from our band leader. What this allows us to do also is it allows us to bus those channels to various speakers in the theater. This system then goes to another system called Dmitri by Meyer Sound. And Dmitri is a super sophisticated matrix of inputs and outputs. What it allows us to do is, instead of having just a left and right stereo mix like you would hear in any concert, it allows us access to any individual speaker that we want at any given time. One of the cool things about Meyer Dmitri is it lets you triangulate sound. And so what I mean by that is, if you have a sound that you want coming from over here, but maybe you don't have a speaker over here, you can use a speaker here, a speaker here, and a speaker here, and it'll do the math, and it will make it sound as if that sound is coming from the position that you want. So we use a lot of speakers in a lot of places to make the sound sound as if it's coming from a lot of different places.
All right, so give me like a speaker tour of this place.
Okay, so we have what we consider our main PA, right? Our main left and right stereo PA, and that consists of 4 Meyer Leopard line arrays. And those arrays are located behind this sheet here. There's 7 boxes behind this sheet, and that's our upper house left array. We have another array just below it, and that's our lower array, also 7 boxes of Meyer Leopard. Now symmetrically on the opposite side, we've got 7 boxes behind this sheet here, and another 7 boxes behind this sheet, for a total of 28 boxes of Meyer Leopard. Then also on this side here, we have a smaller sub-array of the 900 subs by Meyer Sound. They're arrayed in a cardioid pattern, so that 2 of them are front-facing and 1 of them is rear-facing, in order to get a little bit more tightness and directionality out of the subs. And we do the same on this side here. And then at the very top, on this shelf here, we've got 3 boxes of the Meyer 1100s for our really low frequency stuff. These are also wired in cardioid pattern. Then just behind these sheets up here, we have 3 center clusters. Those are Meyer JM1Ps. We have a pair of them over here, which are facing sort of this area of the audience, more of the house left audience. We've got 4 of them clustered over here, which are pointed pretty much directly at my head, maybe a little bit lower bowl there. And then we've got another 2 of them over here, which are pointed at the house right side. We call that our vocal PA because it's nice, especially in such a dense mix, to be able to give the singer physical separation, not just using panning knobs. Our center cluster is directly up above, and in order to avoid feedback in the performer microphones when they're on stage, we've got them aimed over the performers and also over these first few rows of seats. Well, we don't want them to have bad sound, and so we've compensated for that by adding their Meyer UPA Slims in the front of the stage. And we've got 11 of these all around, just to really capture that some of that high end that they might be missing, because these are pointed above them. Another cool trick that our sound designer likes to do is to have a clean vocal come out of the center cluster and then have reverbs come out of the surrounds.
Ooh, show me the surrounds.
Yeah. So behind us, you'll see these are EAWs. They're KF300Es, or they're the ones with the sideways horn. It's so that we can lay them at a 90-degree horizontal orientation. And those get used for a ton of effects. At one point, we have a train that starts on house right and travels behind us to house left. We have music that gets panned all around the room. A lot of times the strings, anytime there's strings, big brass instruments, those get bussed to the rears. And that is really, those are really the surround speakers for this upper bowl of seats. That same information also comes out of some of these speakers that you see up here, which are surrounds for the lower bowl of speakers. And these are Meyers, these are MSL2s, and these are actually some speakers that are left over from La Nuba, which was the show that was in this theater before. We have delay speakers too, so I pointed to the MSL2s up here that are pointed at the lower bowl of seats. Those are our surrounds for that lower bowl of seats. But we also have some other MSL2s that are pointed at the upper bowl And those are delay speakers. So again, for anyone who's a little bit farther back, to really make them feel like they're still in it. There's no bad seat in the house from a visual standpoint and from a sound standpoint. A lot of times when you go and see a show, there's a concept in audio called coherence. The sound that comes out of your speakers will not only come from there, but it'll also come from every surface that it reflects from in the room, right? So you've got walls, you've got ceilings, you've got catwalks, you've got all sorts of things. And so sometimes the farther you are from that source, the muddier the sound might seem. And so having those delays allow you to have more direct information. That direct sound, it sounds like it's coming from a closer source. And so you've got a higher direct to reverberant ratio. And so you're not hearing so much of the reverberant sound bouncing off the walls. You have a speaker that is dedicated to you or to your area. And that particularly applies to the higher frequency information. When our sound designer, Jonathan Deans, decided to build a design for the show, he decided to put speakers inside the stage. And instead of having traditional speaker grills pointed up, they decided to get a little bit creative and drill out some Donald Duck feet. And those are some D&B Audio-Technica 8S speakers that are pointed straight up. Again, to get some cool effects, some sounds coming directly from the stage. Our sound designer loves moving things around the room. There's times where you might hear the guitar do some crazy panning from left to right, or some banjos spinning around the room. Some of our big orchestral moments will oftentimes have all of maybe the strings and brass instruments pan to just the surrounds, just to really envelop the audience with this music, you know, especially because the songs are so dense, they're written so densely that having everything just come out of left and right almost wouldn't be fair to the audience. The music is very, very dynamic, and so the mix tends to be very, very dynamic. We like to kind of open up. We've got our prologue, which is a very kind of quiet little piece, and then we go immediately into our vortex. You're surrounded by sound. There's stuff travel, you can hear the wind. It almost sounds like you're in a tornado or something like that. And so then it gets real loud, and then, you know, there's a lot of just up and down happening with the music. And so that plays into the storyline as well. It's not just for the sake of making it sound good. Dynamics are very important to me, I think to the sound designer, and just the creators of the show.
What's your favorite sound from the show?
We have an aerial pencil act, which is our second act in the show. And I like to mix it very dynamically. And there's a part where he goes up on his aerial pencil. It's an aerial pole act, but that looks like a giant pencil. And there's a part where he goes up, and I just like to really lean into the faders at that point. And I don't know, I get chills sometimes to this day. Like when I execute it just right, you know, I still get chills. Part of the whole Dmitri infrastructure is a system called Constellation. We use VRAS, it's a virtual room acoustic system. And what it does is it lets us take sound from the room and pump it back out through the PA. We've got 15 microphones hanging, and I can show you, there's one right over here. See where I'm kind of pointing at right there? We've got 15 of those throughout the theater. And what we do with that is we sort of augment the sound of the audience. Sometimes it's chatter, sometimes it's laughter, sometimes it's applause. It doesn't happen through the entirety of the show because it on its own can sound like just a big reverb, kind of. But it does get used at times and can be very helpful to build excitement. It also gets used to sort of quiet down and tame some of that excitement. We activate this system sometimes right before the end of an act. And so to build up this big sort of gargantuan applause, but then maybe 4 or 5 seconds afterwards, we fade it out and the audience responds to that. They stop applauding. It's great for laughter, especially when we have smaller houses, you know. Laughter's contagious, they say. And if sometimes it doesn't matter how funny the performers might be on stage, if there's no one else laughing, sometimes people just will not laugh, you know? So it's hard when we have smaller houses to build that excitement. And so I do feel like it helps a little bit and make them feel more comfortable. There's acrobatics and other things happening on stage. We do have to be conscious of the performers. We have a swing act. And they will sometimes call out to one another when they're ready to do a trick, when they're ready to make a jump. Same with our teeterboard performers. You know, they're going up and down, and so they have to be able to communicate with one another as they're up in the air. And so I think that some amount of it, of course, is we don't want to just completely blow out our guests' ears, but we do take the stuff that's happening on stage into consideration. We can also help a performer along if we do feel there are times where my teeterboard guys maybe are having a little bit rougher of a day. Well, maybe I'll pull the music back a little bit, just to make sure that communication is clear. Or sometimes the juggler may drop a ball, right? And so I'll pull the volume back a little bit, just so that the second time he does that trick, I have got some headroom to really push it, and it makes it more exciting, and it makes it seem like it was intentional, and it makes it seem like it was all just part of the show. Our primary focus is always the performers and the guest safety, but I think our secondary focus is probably to not interrupt the show at any cost, right? And really just try to keep it going.
But nothing ever goes wrong.
It's a live show. Most of the time when things go wrong, the audience has no idea, and that's because I think everyone here does a really good job. I do say sometimes that we have a pretty unique perspective from this position. We are truly the only people who see it almost daily from the best seat in the house, And so it is cool, it is unique, and especially in the beginning when you're first learning how to do this, it can be distracting because in the same way that the audience might have a gasp out loud moment when a performer does a trick, we're here, we're seeing it too, and these are people that we know. In a lot of cases, they're our friends, and so we care about them, and that can have an impact. As amazing as the show is, it certainly would not be the show that it is without the music, right? Music can really tug at our heartstrings. I like the look on their faces when they just look like they've had their minds blown, and I like the feeling that I've contributed to that.